Hello again, everyone. I'm Frederica Whitfield. A look at our top stories that we're following in the CNN newsroom right now. A rallying cry for more action in the Trayvon Martin case. Today, thousands of Americans demand more charges against George Zimmerman. In Houston, Texas, a garage becomes a prison for several elderly people who say they have been held captive. The disturbing allegations coming up next. And comic books come to life in San Diego. Thousands of people descend on the city for Comic-Con. All right, first up, those demonstrations that are being held right now across the country in support of Trayvon Martin. Our correspondents are covering the rallies from coast to coast now. Alina Cho is in New York, where there are a lot of recognizable faces. Alina, I understand Trayvon Martin's mother also is there, and there have been many celebrities who've also arrived.
That's right. That's right, Frederica. In fact, all morning we had been reporting that the big headliner today at this rally would be Sybrina Fulton, the mother of Trayvon Martin, and she was here. She came with the Reverend Al Sharpton. She did take to the podium. She said Trayvon was just a child. He just had candy, and that she vowed that she would work not only for Trayvon's memory, but that she would work for, and speaking to the crowd, your children as well. Again, we had been reporting that she would be the headliner today. That's until about an hour ago we saw Beyonce and Jay-Z arrive. They are here, of course, to lend their support along with the several hundred people who are here behind me. This rally started at about noon Eastern time, still going on, as you can tell behind me. It's one of more than 100 across the country that was organized by the National Action Network, which is the Reverend Al Sharpton's network. And he, again, led this rally here in New York City at One Police Plaza. This rally comes exactly a week after a Florida jury acquitted George Zimmerman in the murder of Trayvon Martin. And ever since then, Frederica, as you well know, there has been outrage. There have been protests, most of them peaceful, across the country, and commentary from everyone from Trayvon Martin's family to George Zimmerman's family to the president himself, who said very poignantly yesterday, Trayvon Martin could have been me 35 years ago. Frederica?
Alina Cho, thanks so much. Keep us abreast there out of Manhattan. Let's go to Miami now, and that's where we find Nick Valencia. Trayvon Martin's father is at that rally. You had an opportunity to talk with him earlier. Nick?
Hey, Fred. Yeah, how are you? The rally has wrapped up. It took about 2 hours for everybody to show up. There was hundreds of people here. Organizer had anticipated more than 1,000. It's unclear if they got that number, but their message is clear. They wanted to appeal and amend that stand your ground law. A lot of people wanted to completely wipe that away. Others just wanted to get it amended or have the governor take a closer look at it. Nationally, these demonstrators are also calling for the Department of Justice to take a closer look and intervene in the George Zimmerman case. They want civil rights charges filed against the former neighborhood watchman. But it was a very emotional time for Tracy Martin, the father of Trayvon, who spoke to the crowd. He spoke about his son's legacy. He also spoke about supporting those in attendance. He said, I'm going to fight for my son until I die, and I'm going to fight for your sons as well. So there was a lot of people that showed up here in Miami, and Tracy Martin was, as he told us, very overwhelmed by all the supporters that showed up in Miami here today. Fred?
All right, Nick Valencia, thanks for bringing us that. Now let's move on to the nation's capital. That's where we find Athena Jones. Athena, organizers are demanding that the federal government prosecute George Zimmerman on civil rights violations. Is there a greater likelihood of that? Is that kind of driving conversation there?
Hi, Frederick. Well, that's certainly what organizers are calling for, and all the several hundred people who've shown up at this rally on the federal courthouse steps in Washington. That's what they want to see. Now, if you talk to legal experts, they say that there's a high bar for bringing federal civil rights charges in this case. They have to prove that George Zimmerman acted out of a sense of racial hatred or racial animus. Federal investigators have been down in Florida conducting an investigation since last year, interviewing multiple witnesses and people who knew George Zimmerman. They're going to have to come up with evidence that wasn't brought to and presented at the state trial. And so there's a high bar there. Nevertheless, you have several hundred folks who have come out here in D.C. in the hot sun. We've heard from several several speakers already. This has been going on about an hour. We've heard from Dick Gregory, the longtime civil rights activist. We also heard from a pastor who really laid out the case they're making. They believe that the justice system failed Trayvon Martin and his family, and they want to see action from the Department of Justice. That got a big response from this crowd here. Another speaker who got a big response talked about a column that had been written recently about how people have a right to be afraid of black men because they commit a disproportionate share of the crimes. That speaker said if that's true, then black people have a right to be afraid of white men because they're the most serial killers and they are the ones who blow up buildings and shoot people in schools. So some really charged and fired up language here and a fired up crowd. Frederica?
All right, Athena Jones, thanks so much for that update from the nation's capital. All right, let's head to Los Angeles now. Dan Simon is there. Dan, protests earlier in the week in Los Angeles turned violent. How are things different today?
Well, Frederica, I would certainly echo what all of my CNN colleagues said in all the various cities in terms of the messages that are coming out. As one speaker just said, Trayvon went down, but we rose up. I want to introduce you to one person who's out here today who's sort of indicative of the sentiments that we're hearing here. This is Phyllis Kroom. She's from the East Coast. You looked online to see where a protest might be occurring in Los Angeles. Explain why you felt so strongly about being out here today.
Well, I felt it important to support the Martin family, but also to show solidarity with all those folk who believe in social and racial justice in this country. But as importantly, I really wanted to come out to express my view that, you know, the lives of not just black young men and women are at risk, but the lives of all young men and women are at risk, and it's important that I think that be highlighted.
What stands out in terms of what some of the speakers have said? I mean, what do you really take away from this?
The fact that this country needs to engage in a dialogue. We need to start talking about these real, tangible issues of race. And until that's done, we're going to continue to have these sorts of problems.
Phyllis, thanks very much. We're here in front of the federal courthouse here in Los Angeles. Obviously, they chose this location because they're calling for the civil rights charge against George Zimmerman. Frederica, I would say a few hundred people are here. They expected a large crowd, and they certainly got one. They've been working closely with the Los Angeles Police Department to make sure that everything goes smoothly, and so far, this seems to be a very peaceful protest, and they certainly don't expect to see any problems going forward. Frederica, we'll send it back to you.
All right. Dan Simon, thanks so much in Los Angeles. Thank you, and thanks to all our correspondents really dotting the map there at all of the rallies. Tonight.